Hey Optimancers, Chris here. Had a comment on a recent video that said, you should watch the fireside chat between the president of WotC and the CEO of Hasbro. They are about to, quote, heavily monetize D&D. They just added Walking Dead and Transformers to Magic the Gathering. You should talk about this. You are about to have My Little Pony show up with the stat blocks. This channel is supported by the patrons on Patreon. Thank you so much to Lightfoot, Glenn Wilson, Jay Good, Jared Huberger, John Hugdahl, Wu Carl Kong, Kawaii Angel, Lila Corpsegrave, Makatu, Mark D, Lone Pilgrim, Maddie Heiteden, Michael, Moxie, Nemo, Prometheo NTG, Reichenstahl, Ryan Wilmot, Shane and Todd Beyond, Taftash, Third, Thunderlock, Valentine, Clovier, Vo, William Whittles, and thanks to all the patrons of this channel. Let's get going. Now, I know the standard method of internet interaction involves you read a headline or you hear a quote secondhand, and then you make a judgment. Personally, I like to be a little unconventional in that I actually like to read the article or watch the video or listen to the discussion and then make a judgment. The phrase, they are about to heavily monetize D&D, definitely warrants some investigation. So just to set this up, Hasbro did a webinar featuring a conference call of top executives to reassure investors about the health of Wizards of the Coast. Primarily, they talked about Magic the Gathering, which is by far the biggest slice of the pie, but they also talked about D&D and their plans to grow these brands. So let's hear what they had to say and discuss the ramifications for us, the consumers.
D&D has never been more popular, and we have really great fans and incredible engagement. But the first thing I saw with it is the brand is really under monetized. Earlier this year, we acquired D&D Beyond, and we're really excited about the possibilities the platform provides and the positive momentum we've already seen.
So I found that first part pretty clear. On April 15th of this year, Wizards of the Coast bought D&D Beyond. They didn't do that because they were having a boring Friday. Costs of printing are going up, costs of paper are going up, costs of distribution are going up, and digital sales of books through D&D Beyond are going up. The future of the brand is dependent on them at least moving in part to digital platforms. We've all known this for years, but the recent supply chain challenges have made it more true than ever right now. Now, if you don't use digital products to play D&D, there's nothing wrong with that at all. If you just like to buy the books and use the books and play with your friends, there's no reason to think that you're not going to be able to continue to do that as they move forward. In fact, they specifically do say later in this discussion, the books, they are still planning to produce the books. So if you like to buy the books and you don't like to use D&D Beyond, no problem. You're fine. Now, as far as I'm concerned, digital is really win-win. For us players, carrying around a tablet or even a phone when we go to visit our friends to play some D&D is way more convenient than lugging a backpack full of an ever-increasing number of hardcover books. I find looking up rules is easier. Creating characters is easier. Personally, I have a ton of D&D books on a bookshelf, and I hardly ever use them anymore. Digital just works so much better for me. So my buying habits have changed. I used to buy the books exclusively. Then I started buying the books and the digital content. But now with recent releases, I don't even buy the physical book anymore. I really think as a player, a digital product is just a better product for me overall. And I do think that has happened for a number of players. So the market is changing, and Wizards kind of has to change with the market. But for Wizards, actually, digital is even a bigger win. They can sell me a book for the same price. They don't have to print it. They don't have to store it. They don't have to ship it. Digital is just way more efficient for them. So definitely D&D was under monetized for Wizards when all those digital sales were being handled by a third party. But there's even more benefit to Wizards of the Coast from the purchase of D&D Beyond, as is discussed next in this conversation.
With DDB, we have a window into how fans are playing the game daily. Even if they're playing around the dining room table, many of our D&D fans use Dungeons and Dragons Beyond as a companion app on their phone to make the experience better. And this gives us a look at how people are playing in their homes that we never had before.
I think the average consumer doesn't necessarily recognize how valuable consumer data is to a business. Now they don't just see how much they're selling, but to whom and how much that product gets used. And that's not necessarily a bad thing for the consumer either. I'll give you an example. So, Spelljammer, let's say it didn't sell well. Well, that's one piece of information. But if they also see that people who did buy it aren't using it, then now they can totally access that information as well. And then they can use that information to adjust future projects. I can tell them that I bought Spelljammer and I don't like it. However, just by not ever referencing it on my D&D Beyond account tells them that already. That's actually mutually beneficial for them to have that data for both them and for me.
So when we think about our future monetization, we start here. Dungeon masters, which are the people who guide you through the adventure, they only make up about 20% of the audience, but they are the largest share of our paying players. And for the rest of the players at the table, we believe digital will allow us to offer a lot more options to create rewarding experiences post-sale that helps us unlock the type of recurrent spending you see in digital games, where more than 70% of the revenue in digital gaming comes post-sale.
So what she's saying here is they want to find digital projects that will appeal to non-DM players beyond just buying the book. It doesn't sound to me that, at least by what she said, that these will be required purchases, but additional options that aren't available now, but will be offered in the future, and they hope we'll purchase them. What these options will be, and whether they're worth it, that's yet to be seen. If they're worth the money, I will buy them. If they aren't, then I won't.
The D&D strategy, if the Magic strategy is a deep single quadrant strategy, the D&D strategy is a broad 4-quadrant strategy where we have this powerful brand that has similar awareness to like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter. And we're going to imbue it with blockbuster entertainment like we have with the movie coming up, AAA, true AAA high-end gaming like we're going to have with Baldur's Gate 3 next year. And then just an amazing set of products that we will activate as Hasbro across our blueprint, whether that's what we're doing at D&D Beyond, what we're doing at hobby stores with new books and accessories, or what our consumer products team and licensing team are doing to build out a host of new collectibles and toys and games for a more casual fan.
So first he talks about Magic the Gathering having a deep single quadrant strategy. To sum up what he meant by that, he says that brand awareness for Magic the Gathering isn't as high as it is for D&D, but the sales are higher because Magic players, well, they spend a lot of money on the game. So their business plan for Magic the Gathering is to use tie-ins like they did with Warhammer 40k to bring in more of these highly engaged and high-spending Magic the Gathering players. For D&D, he said that brand awareness is already pretty much universal, so what they're looking at is a 4-quadrant strategy for D&D. So this is their strategy for profit. First thing they're going to be doing is making blockbuster entertainment like the upcoming D&D movie. Imagine they make some licensing money from the movie, but I would also imagine they're hoping that the movie might convince some viewers to play the game and buy the books. We know Stranger Things helped D&D sales, and the movie might as well. Second, they want to use the D&D brand in AAA video games, same as with creating movies. If the video games are successful, then that is profit for their investors. Third, he talks about continuing to release products, D&D Beyond digital products, as well as continuing to release actual books and accessories. So here's where the game itself continues to earn profits for their investors. And the 4th quadrant is the release of new toys, collectibles, and games for a more casual fan of D&D, and if they sell, that's profit. So there you have it, folks. So how are they going to deal with D&D being under-monetized? Well, they're going to be making movies that are Dungeons and Dragons movies. They're going to be making video games that are Dungeons and Dragons video games. They're going to be making toys and collectibles and games that are Dungeons and Dragons based. They are going to be releasing more digital content. So I think this is the right time for me to circle back to the initial comment that asked me to listen to this conversation. And now you've kind of listened to it too. And they had the concern that Magic the Gathering is doing things like incorporating Walking Dead and Transformers and, of course, Warhammer 40K, and we should expect the same kind of thing to happen to Dungeons & Dragons in order to more heavily monetize Dungeons & Dragons. I think we can now safely dispel that concern. They're not going to do that. Instead, they have a different strategy for Dungeons & Dragons because they've determined that their best method for profit is different for Dungeons & Dragons than it is for Magic the Gathering. So I do want to look a bit at the reactions I saw to this conversation I saw online. There was a Reddit thread regarding this, so I checked that out. As you can imagine, everyone was super happy about this conversation. No, but seriously, people were pissed off. Now, I should say that this Reddit post, it was titled something like, Wizard of the Coast thinks that, quote, D&D is under-monetized, and then underneath it had something like, they're planning to squeeze every penny they can from their players. And if you read something like that, you're going to have an emotional response. And certainly that shows in the comments to that video. A lot of stuff about how Wizard of the Coast has become a greedy corporation. And they're going to try to steal our money, and that we're ultimately going to leave D&D and go to the competitor, Paizo, because Paizo doesn't act in this greedy fashion. So ironically, Paizo is going to be the one that ultimately benefits from Wizards of the Coast greed. So in response to those comments, it is clear to me that these comments were being made by people who hadn't listened to the conversation. They were reacting to the post itself, and so they were speculating as to how Wizards of the Coast was basically going to steal our money. Now, they can't really steal our money. All they can do is offer us products that we can choose whether we wish to consume or not. And if we choose to consume them, then it's a transaction. They make money, we get the product. And we are the ones who make the decision if that's worth it for us or not. Now, there's also speculation that these people who are running Wizards of the Coast are greedy. Now, they might be greedy. I really can't comment on that. I don't know. But what I do know is it is irrelevant whether they're greedy or not, because it is their job to earn as much profit as they possibly can for their shareholders. This is a legal requirement, actually, for anyone who is working for a public corporation. There was even a case where Henry Ford was sued because he wanted to lower the prices of his cars so that more people could buy cars who formerly couldn't afford them. And he was sued by his own shareholders. And in that judgment, the judgment said, and I quote, "A business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. The powers of the directors are to be employed for that end." Now, this judgment is intended as a protection for shareholders, forcing executives to work for the people who employ them, and they're employed by the shareholders. So who are these shareholders? Well, I think most of us envision like a boardroom, and there's a bunch of wealthy people sitting around it, smoking cigars and throwing money around. But a lot of public investment is made by regular people. I have some retirement savings, not nearly as much as I need to have. So I'll probably be working a long time, but I do have some. And when I get a report on my investments, what I'm always hoping is that they grew. And I'm hoping they grew as much as possible. So that is me actually setting a directive to whoever runs my retirement savings: earn me as much profit as you can. And they have many, many people who have those retirement savings. So they're representing a lot of investors, all not necessarily huge investors, but there's a lot of them, and it does add up. So then what they do is they will invest in companies they think are going to earn the greatest degree of profit, and their directive to the executives of that corporation is earn as much profit as you can, and if you don't, then we will pull our investment from you and we will invest in your competitors who do earn the most profit. Or, as a more extreme measure, you might even have the executives fired or even sued. So the executives' personal greed, they may very well be greedy, but the decisions they make are required to be greedy in that sense, in that they're required to earn as much profit as they can. For me, even though I'm a small investor, I am still an investor and they must earn me as much profit as they can. So I don't think it's necessarily fair to say Hasbro is greedy. And I should probably qualify what I just said. There's no question that Hasbro takes actions that we would define as greedy, but Hasbro itself is just the mechanism for generating profit, but it is the people who invest in Hasbro that are greedy, and maybe the executives are too, but that's not necessary. All that's necessary is that the investors are greedy. And I don't know where my retirement savings are. They might include Hasbro, but it doesn't matter because all public corporations have to be greedy by definition or take greedy actions because the people they're working for are trying to earn as much profit as they can. So singling out Hasbro here, I don't think makes a lot of sense because all corporations or public corporations work that way. And you know what? Most private corporations do as well. Even though we can't invest in them, when you open a business, usually your goal is that it is profitable. Now, a private corporation can choose to take actions that aren't the most profitable, and they're not legally required to do so, like with a public corporation, but usually still that's their directive. And quite often these companies aren't even run by their owners, and so the owner's directive to their executives is earn us as much money as you can. So Hasbro, like all corporations, is a legal mechanism derived for the purpose of profit generation. So it's not capable of being moral or immoral, or greedy or not greedy. It can absolutely take greedy actions, but those actions are actually on behalf of shareholders who are demanding them. Now, there's one more comment I saw quite a bit in that Reddit thread that I do want to address, and that is that Wizards of the Coast is going to raise their prices because they are being greedy. So I am going to let you in on a little secret now, a basic economics lesson. If you see prices go down, it is still because the business that is lowering those prices figures they can earn more money from us by doing so. Whatever price you pay for a product, it's always what the business figures they can earn the most from. This is how pricing works. So whether prices go down or they stay the same or they go up, whatever it is, it's always because that's the price that the business figures is going to be the most profitable for them. So this idea that if prices go up, the executives are greedy, and if prices go down, the executives aren't greedy, that's false. That's not how it works. It works based on the most basic economic principle, and that is the law of supply and demand. And what the law of supply and demand tells all businesses, and any business that ignores the law of supply and demand will not exist very long. The law of supply and demand says that if we increase the price on a product or a service, this even applies to things like taxation and employment. It's really everywhere. But what it tells us is if the price goes up, demand goes down, and if the price goes down, demand goes up. And if we get more demand for our product, then we can sell more units. And so what they have to do is this mathematical calculation that is more complex than it maybe appears, but they have to work out what their costs are, and then they'll work out what the potential profit is if they raise their price, if they lower their price, if they keep it the same, and whatever is going to earn them the most profit, that's what they're going to do. So when we see a price go up or down, and then we make assumptions about the people running the company and their greed or non-greed, that's not really accurate. Usually the goal is to earn the profit, and the prices are set to earn the greatest degree of profit, and sometimes that means lower prices. So just keep that in mind. When you see a price, there's a reason for it, and it's based on the law of supply and demand, not necessarily on the personal greed of the person running the company. Now, I know you can think of examples, and I can too, of what they refer to as price gouging. So this is where a product is priced at a ridiculous amount, and people are basically forced to buy it. One example is pharmaceuticals. So somebody needs the medicine. They don't really have a choice. And if, somebody's a unique supplier of that medicine, then they can charge these ridiculous numbers and people are basically forced to pay it. But I don't think you need to worry about price gouging in the role-playing game market because there's no monopolies here. There are lots of gaming companies. There's lots of games we can play. We don't even have to play the current games. We can go and play the old games too. So I wouldn't worry about price gouging, but you might pay higher prices and you might pay lower prices. It all depends on that calculation they make on how they are going to earn profit. Now, I want to apologize for inserting an economics lesson into a video in a channel that talks about Dungeons and Dragons, but I thought it was relevant because there is this sense of dread that I saw in all these comments that Wizards of the Coast was somehow going to squeeze all this money from us like they were reaching into our pockets and taking it. But that isn't going to be the case. What's going to be the case is they are going to try to get more money out of us, but they're going to do it by offering us products they hope we will want to purchase. So in the case of the movie, they put out the movie. We're going to take a look at the movie, decide if it's something that is worth the price of admission for us. And if it's not, we won't go and they will fail. In order for them to succeed, they must deliver products that we think are worth the price they're charging for them. And that is how they will be successful in delivering that profit to their shareholders. And I hope they succeed because if they do, that means I will have products that I want to purchase at a price I'm willing to pay for them. And I am great with that if they succeed. And time will tell if they do or not. But I hope this video is somewhat informative for you. I hope if you were just dreading this kind of scary wording that D&D is under monetized and we're going to deal with that, if that was like really giving you anxiety, I hope I might have relieved some of it. Otherwise, until next time, I am going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.